Hey guys, so a lot of people have asked me how I made my portfolio website. Now it is made using vue.js, and what I want to say is that this is very complex, although it looks very relatively simple, but it requires a lot of techniques. I mean, only the sidebar alone can take up one video. So I'm not going to tell you how I made this entire site. The source code is available in GitLab. I will link that in the description. But today we are going to build something very similar, almost similar to the home page. So before I show you that, let me just give you an overall idea of how my site works. So in the front page, these are pulled from GitHub. These are my most recently updated repos, 10 of these. So the about page has nothing very interesting, just some information about me. So the resume page contains all my resumes. This is also not very much interesting, technique wise. And the portfolio page is a little bit interesting. So this page, I have a bucket in my GCP account and I have an YAML file there. So the portfolio page pulls data from that file. So it is, every time I make something new, I don't have to change code here. So I can just update the file there and it will automatically show up here. Alright, so let me show you what we'll be building today. So we'll be building something like this. Yeah. So that's simple. I have my name on top and the 10 most recently updated GitHub repos, just like in my home page. And in my about page, there is some information about me. So this is a very good starting point for a portfolio. You can extend it to whatever you like. So let me show you how to build this. So first we'll have to create a Vue project. So let me just use the web UI because that is interesting. And I'm going to use the Vue CLI. So I suppose you have it installed. And if you do not have it installed, I will link some tutorials in the description on how to install it. So basically it's easy. You just do npm install and global add vue/CLI. And you just install the CLI. So once you have it installed, just write Vue UI. So it will start the graphical user interface here. So as you can see, it opened one of my projects that I was working on right now. Let me just go to the project manager. So these are all my projects that I have. Let me create a new one and select the folder. So create a new project here. Let me give you a name. Let me give it the name Vue Portfolio. And I'm going to use Yarn. You can use any package manager you want. And go to next. Now here you can select the preset. So this is my favorite preset that I use. So Sass with Babel, TypeScript and a lot of other things. So I'm going to use this thing. Now you can choose your own presets like Vue 3 and etc. But since I use it the most, I'm going to choose it. I am probably not going to use half of the things I have written here. I probably will not need a Vuex or the testings, but I'm going to use it because it will save my time. And create project. Now we wait until the project is created. It will take around 1 or 2 minutes. Alright, so it's done and let me just close it. So as you can see, it shows me a little cool dashboard type of thing, and I can go to tasks and serve. So this is my npm task that will serve it, and I can run it. So it will compile my app and start it, or if there is an error, it will show me here. So as you can see, it's successful. Let me just open the app. And this is the basic app. So it tells me what kind of plugins I have used, what other links, and in my about page I'll show you, see an about. So this is the basic scaffolding. Now let's get started with the programming. So I'll keep the UI running and I will open the new terminal window. Let me move to there. And let me open Visual Studio Code. Alright, so I have a basic structure here. So if you have previously used Vue CLI, you are familiar with this structure. So inside src I have all the components and other stuff for my app. In the public I have these images that have icons, etc. So I'm not going to talk about here. And this is more likely this will not be a Vue tutorial, so it will more likely be a code along. So if you need information on some things about Vue that I use here, feel free to ask me in the comments. So I'm giving you the quick overview of the structure. So because this is the first time I'm using Vue CLI in my channel, so it asked me if the ESLint will use whatever is installed locally. So I'll just click on allow. So the main.ts is the part where the Vue.js app starts. This becomes a main.js after compilation. The TypeScript becomes JavaScript, and this is the one that is linked to your HTML file. So it imports the app from my app.vue and sets it up. So app.vue is the main entry point of the Vue.js app. So it has a template, it has some Sass styling, and it does not have a JavaScript part yet. So as you can see, this sets up this entire thing. For this component, we have some router links which are created from Vue router. So if I go to router and index.ts, so it has two paths. So the root path will show me the home component, the about path will show me the about component, and it lazy loads the about component. So the about.vue is not loaded until you visit the about page. Anyway, so if I go to views, I have two views. So home.vue is for home page and about.vue is for the about page that you saw last time. This is an about page. And inside home, I am importing the hello world component and I am showing it with a message. And I have to list the hello world component that I used here. And finally, I am exporting the home class. And if I go to components inside the hello world.vue, this is the hello world component. It has, so it is exporting the class hello world. It has a property message. So this message property is the one that you saw in home.vue that you are passing here. Anyway, so and the store is Vue store, which can be stored which can be used for storing states. Now I'm not going to use this at all in this case, but I'm just going to keep it here. Now let's start. I'm first going to delete the hello world.vue component. We don't need it. This will break everything. As you can see, the build now has errors because it can't find the hello world component. So let me remove everything here. Remove that. Remove this. And I messed up the comment. Yeah, remove all of this, and the build has now succeeded. So let's get started by installing some dependencies. So I'll open my terminal. So first thing I will install is Tailwind Css. Now I am using Tailwind Css almost everywhere nowadays because it's very easy to use. Now in order to install Tailwind CSS, you have to use this exact command. Let me just find it. I have it somewhere. This one. So post CSS version 7 and post CSS 7 compat, etc. So this is because Vue.js does not support post CSS version 8, whereas the latest version of Tailwind CSS requires post CSS version 8. So just press install or just press enter and it's done. Now in my assets file, I will create a new file called style.css. So this is the part where I will import the Tailwind CSS stuff. So here I will use the @tailwind directives. This you can find in the Tailwind CSS documentation. So this file will basically import all the Tailwind CSS stuffs. Now I just have to include this file somewhere in my Vue app. So the best part is inside the main.ts. So I'm just going to import So at stands for so at stands for my src folder. So inside the src I have assets, inside that I have style.css, and that's everything you need to do in order to include Tailwind CSS. So now Tailwind CSS is ready to use. Alright, now before we do anything else, I need to have some fonts. So you can use any font, but I am just going to copy some fonts here. So these fonts are custom build of iOS font that I built. I like these fonts, so I'm just going to use this. And also this can be a guide of how to create new fonts. I mean, how to create new font families from font faces or from TTF files in your web app. So for that I'll go to app.vue, and here in the CSS or the CSS part I'm going to create 3 new font faces. So how do you do that? It's easy. So you'll start by writing at font face. So here you will write a font family. This will be the name of the font, and here you will give the URL. So the URL will be in my assets folder, and this will be this one. And finally this is the normal font, so I will use font weight normal. What am I doing? So this tells the browser that this file is a font family with this name and used for the normal text. Now I'm going to copy this 2 times. So the second one will be for the bold font. So I will change the font face or the font weight to bold, and the next one will be for the light font. And I will change it to light, or just 100. Sorry, there is no light. And finally I will change the font family of the app to the app I just created, or to the font face I just created. And that is all. Now if I visit the page, I hope it is running. So as you can see, the font has changed. Alright, let's start styling the navigation bar. Now for that I will remove this thing. So when you're using Tailwind CSS, you generally do not need to write any kind of CSS. So here I am also assuming that you know the class names of Tailwind CSS. If you do not know, that's fine. You can go to Tailwind CSS documentation. They have a very nice searchable documentation. Anyway, so I'll give this nav bar a little bit of class. The first thing I want to do, I need to have some background. So let's do bg rate 500. This will give a reddish background. I will add a little bit of padding. So p4 is, if I remember correctly, 1 rem of padding. I will give a little bit of shadow. And finally I will make it flex, display flex. So when it is mobile screen, it will show up as a column, and when the screen size increases, it will become row. It's easy. Let's see how it looks right now. What did I do wrong? I need to initiate Tailwind CSS. So I'll write npx Tailwind CSS init -p. So this will create 2 files which will also initiate Tailwind CSS. So these 2 files, tailwind.config.js and postcss.config.js. So right now I do not need to change anything here, and I think this will make Tailwind CSS work. So I'll stop the task and run it once more. And as you can see, it worked. Alright, let's now style those links together. So first I will remove this weird bar thingy. So I will add some class to each of these. So each of them will have a background of, not background, it will have white text. They will have padding 4 in the horizontal direction and padding 2 in the vertical direction. They will have margin 1 and they will be a little bit of rounded. And finally, when they are active, so for that I will do the exact active class. Their background will change to a dark version of the red. Now the exact active class, and there is also something called active class. So the exact active class does exact matching. So I mean, if I just wrote active class, it will also trigger for this link also, because as you can see, both of them start with slash. So if I did just active class, anything that starts with this thing would match as active, and exact active class will match the entire thing instead of matching the starting part. And I'll just copy the same thing for the next one also. Let's see. And as you can see, they now look a little bit better. So the home page is now active, so it shows this dark color. If I press on about, it will show that see the about page. Alright, now let's start doing the GitHub part. So for that I will create a new component. So I'll name it repo card. So I'll create a template and write a div with a class. Let's call it repo. So I'll fill up the template later. Let me manage the JavaScript part. So I'll have a script. So I'll have a TypeScript. Now it shows me some default stuff. I'm not going to use this. So I'm going to import quite a few things from view property decorator. So I'm going to use import component, I'm going to use prop, and I'm going to import view from view property decorator. Next I'll create a class and export it. So export default class, let's call it repo card, which will extend view. And finally I have to tell view that this is a component, so I will decorate it with the component decorator. Now it will have quite a few bit of properties, so I will use the prop decorator. So the first property is going to be the repo name. So I'll put an exclamation mark. So the exclamation mark is necessary because this thing is not going to have a constructor. So let me just show what will happen if I removed it. So it will complain. So it will complain that it has no initializer and is not definitely assigned in the constructor. So what it says, if I want to use it, I have to initialize with something like this. So maybe an initial value. Because this thing does not have a constructor, I am not assigning it in the constructor. This is actually a non-nullable field, so I cannot put null. But I do not also want to put some default data, so I will use the exclamation mark. So exclamation mark tells view that this is a nullable data. And similarly we have 3 more properties. So I have 3 more properties. Second one is a repo URL. This will hold the link for the repository, which will be a string. Next one is a repo star count. So this will be a number which will tell me how many stars I have on that repo. And the last one is the repo description. So this will also be a string. This will be the description of the repository if it has one. Alright, now for now I'm just going to write the repo name here. So I'll come back for this styling once I have something to display. Otherwise we will just be styling blindly. So let's go to home.view. So this is the part where we will fetch the data from GitHub and show. So first thing first, let me delete this guy. So at the top I want to show my name. For that I will use one h1. So let me give it a class of, let's say, text 6xl, quite a big bit of text, and a margin, a little bit of margin. And inside that I will have my name. Now I want to wrap my first name in a span so that I can show a different color. So this will have a class of text red 500. So I'll write my first name, and outside that I'll write my second name. Let's see. Looks pretty good. Alright, now let's do the GitHub fetching part. So for that I'm going to install Axios. So this will be what we'll use for making requests. So first we will create a new interface for the details of my repository. So let's do that. This will be similar to the properties that I showed before. So we'll start by interface. Let's call it repo. So this will be a nice structure to the data that I want. So it will have a repo name, which will be a string. It will have a repo description, which will also be a string. It will have a repo star count, which will be a number. And finally a repo URL, which will also be a string. Now let me create a data. So if you have seen my Vue.js videos that I did, so those were not Vue CLI. So they are anything. So as you can see here, we were using a class syntax. So class syntax means every component will be a class. So previously where you needed to write data, so if you remember, we had something like data, which was a function that would return some blah blah blah. So here we do not have to deal with all of that. So any member of the class will become a data. So let me create a data and call it repos. So this will be a list of the repo. So this will be an array of repo, and I am initializing it with empty array. Now let's create the mounted function. So this function will run when the view of this page is mounted in the browser. So let me import the Axios. Import Axios from Axios. So here I will make a GET request. So axios.get. So the URL is api.github.com /users/ here you will write your own user ID. I am going to write mine /repos and sort equals updated. So this tells GitHub to sort all my repos with the most recently updated ones in the front. So after that, then I'm going to take the values. If you have not watched my videos on promises, do watch them right now to understand what I am doing here. Actually, I do not need the parentheses here because this is only just a single argument. So first I am going to take the array and I am going to took the data part. So this is it has type of Axios response. So inside it we have a field called data, which will store all the lists, and I am going to slice it. So I am going to take the first 10 elements, and then for each so for each I am going to create a repo. So this will have an any type. So this dot the repos list, I am going to push a new repo here. So the repo name here, here's where the interface comes in. As you can see, since this repos is a list of this interface called repo, my VS Code can automatically autocomplete this because it knows that whatever I want to push here is of this interface, will satisfy this interface, so it can automatically autocomplete. So repo name will be repo.name. So this repo object stores the data. It has fields like name, description, etc. So I'm going to put this, then repo desk, and as you can see, since all of them are required, I just cannot push until I create all of them, create all the 4 details. So this will be repo.description. These names you can find from GitHub's API description. So repo star count, this is known as repo.stargazers count, pretty weird name. And finally we have repo URL, which will be repo.html_URL. And finally, when I have written everything, this I can now add it. Alright, so now also let me just put a catch part. Where does that then end? So the then ends here. So let me put a catch. So catch will give me an error, and I'm just going to, let's not deal too much about it, I'm just going to log it, console.error. So this is all. Now whenever my home page is loaded, this repo list will be populated. Now let's show this repo list somewhere. So first I am going to import the component. So import repo card from, so in my components folder, this is known as repo card.vue, and I have to tell Vue that this guy depends on this component. So for that I have to make some changes in this decorator. So I will pass it an object with the property components, where I'll just write the name of the component. So this tells Vue that this home depends on the repo card component. So after the h1 I will create a div. So this will be a grid. Let me create a div. So this will be a grid. It will by default in small screens will have 1 column, and when it increases to LG it will have 3 columns, and on Excel screens it will have 4 columns. Alright, now I will iterate over all the repos. So let me do that. So v4, so repo in repos, this is more or less like normal JavaScript iteration, and I'll pass a key. So the key will be the repo name, because 2 repos cannot have same names, and this will have a class. Let's give it a class of margin 4. Now for each repo I am going to create a repo card. So I'll do repo card. Here I will pass all the 4 props. So first thing I want to pass the class. So let's not do anything with the class. Let me just pass the things. So repo name, so repo name I will pass repo.repo name, or not that, this one. And similarly the other ones. So repo description will pass repo.repodesk. So all the things that you see here. Repo star count will be repo star count, and finally repo URL repo URL. Alright, so everything is set here. Let's see how it looks. As you can see, it shows 10 of my most recently updated repos. Now these do not have any styling at all. So let's now since we have something to visualize, we know that this is working fine. Now let's do the styling part. So I'll go to the repo card component. So I'll start by giving it some class. So let's give it a little bit of margin, give it quite a bit of shadow, and when I hover over it, let's increase the shadow a little bit. Also this should have transition. This should have a duration of 500. Also when I hover over it, the cursor should show pointer, and let's give it a little bit of padding and a fixed height. Alright, now as you can see, these have distinct borders, so they have a shadow, and when I hover over it, the shadow increases. Alright, so let's style the details inside it. So I'll create a new div. So here I'll have a span which will show the name of the repository. So let's give it a class. So it will have large text, and when the screen size is medium, the text will increase a little bit. Let's give it a bit of fixed width, and when it is screen size increases, it will take automatic space. Let's make the font bold, also uppercase, and truncate. So when there is no space left, the name will be truncated. And inside the span, I'll show the repo name. Let's see how it looks. So as you can see, they are now bold and uppercase. Alright, now after this, so inside the same div, I will write another div. This will be inline, and margin will be automatic. So one span with the name, I will just write stars and a colon. So this will show the star count. And span, I will do class. So let's give it a little bit of margin on the left side, and let's give it a red color. Here I will show the star count. Repo star count. So you can see it looks like this. So these two are a little bit close, these names. So let me fix that. So I'll just make this one flex. Now they are far apart. And finally, let's show the description somewhere. So after this flex is over, here I'm going to create another div. So this will have a class wrap. This will take full width, and text align will be left. So here I will write a paragraph. So this will have quite a bit of padding on the top and the bottom. Its text size will be small, and on large screen or medium size screen its text size will increase a little bit, and this will hold the repo description. As you can see, it now shows a bit of description here. Also, one thing I did wrong, which is here. So I did slice from the second element. Actually this should be 0, so that I slice from the first element. Yeah, as you can see. Right, so now I have 10. Alright, finally what do we do with the URL? So I want when the user clicks on it, this URL will open. So for that, inside this div, I'll add a click handler, so add click, and I will run a function called open URL or a method. So let's create the method here. So open URL, so this will be just window.open, not that, window.open. So this will open the repo URL and target will be blank. Let's see. Now when I click on any one of these, this opens the corresponding repository. Neat, right? So there you go, a nice little basic portfolio using Vue.js, which you can use at the starting point of your own portfolio. You can extend it any way you want. And if you want to see how I built my portfolio, the repository is open on GitLab. I will put a link in the description below. If you want to see more stuff like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. And if you have any suggestion on what videos I should make next, feel free to comment down below. Thank you.